Welcome to Inside the Franchise. This is Jerry. I got Costa with me. So we're gonna be talking about the Saints today. Man, when you look back at the 2020 season, it was crazy for everybody, including the Saints. But I mean, they were one of the teams that finished right there in the race, right there to get into the Super Bowl. They finished 12-4. They won their division. Heartbreaker against the Tampa Bay Bucks, man. When you look at it, Costa, what's the biggest takeaway from the 2020 season from the New Orleans Saints?
I think the biggest takeaway is that it's really a they're at a crossroads as a franchise. I mean, they've had their franchise legend Drew Brees, and he had a great run with them, got a ring, and now he's retired, and now it's time to really try to use the talent they do have on that roster, because it is a very good roster, to their advantage in terms of trying to get a new quarterback up to speed. And so I really think that whether or not they can get a new quarterback to play at a high level is going to determine where this franchise is going to be headed in the future.
I mean, you said some really. I think that was a perfect word that you used, right? So when you look at it, I mean, Drew Brees finally announced his retirement, right? He had everybody kind of guessing, was he gonna come? They restructured his deal, and then of course the Saints are in cap hell as well too, right? So, but we've been seeing them making some minor tweaks and moves, trying to get underneath that cap. I think everybody had a deadline. I believe it was today to get under the cap space. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I believe they did do that. They did lose. They did lose Trey Hendrickson, right?
Yes.
In free agency. So when you stop, you look at the big picture. I mean, they have they have a lot of building blocks, right? For whoever's going to take over. So of course, some of the news that we did see is Taysom Hill did sign a restructured deal, and they brought back Jameson Winston. So when you stop, you look at it, is the need right now at quarterback a big need? Let me
I
send
think
that over to you.
Yeah, I think that they might not be in the ideal situation in that Jameis Winston is not, let's say, 15 guys in the league where you're like, this is our quarterback of the future, surefire, he's established, etc. But when you look at the market and how some other teams are struggling to find their quarterback, like the Bears just signed Andy Dalton to probably be their starter, it's definitely not a huge need, because I don't think there's any better option out there. And that's why I like giving Jameis Winston this 1 year, 12 million deal that they gave him, because it's really a nice prove it deal. And we know he has a lot of talent to work with. So I wouldn't say that it's a position they should look to upgrade. They should really go all in on this year of with Jameis Winston in terms of trying to make him the next guy.
Oh yeah, and look, I'm gonna go ahead and chime in my 2 cents here. Like who dat nation, please don't be mad, right? But when you stop and you look at it, I mean, look, Jameis Winston, when he was at Tampa Bay, he never had a running back like Alvin Kamara. He didn't have,
Yep.
he did have wide receiver like Michael Thomas, right? And what do we see James Winston do? I mean, he was always trying to stretch the field, right? With him. Now the good thing is that you got a nice core foundation on the inside of your interior. I know that the right tackle, he looks like one of the better right tackles in the league. So the offensive line seems to still be somewhat of a strength. But when we look at the big picture, hopefully Jameson Winston is able to use the running game to his advantage. Set up some play action, help him get into a rhythm, and not have to just be throwing 5 interceptions and 2 touchdowns or whatnot. So when you stop, you look at the big picture. I think that this is going to be a good, like you said, make or break season for James Winston going forward and for the Saints in general. But let's look at the needs here, man. Yeah, they're in cap hell. They lost some players. Lost Emmanuel Sanders, right, to the Buffalo Bills.
Mm-hmm.
They lost Trey Henderson. And they franchise tagged Marcus Williams, which is a plus for them. Because I think that regardless, Marcus Williams is a nice rangy type safety that you need
Absolutely.
in today's modern game. Even though people want to hold that Vikings miracle against them, but I would like to see anybody be put in that situation and see if they come away with that same outcome. But anyways, getting back into subject, when you look at the overall Saints moving forward, right? Let's look at some of these mock drafts. So CBS Sports, they're picking 28th. So CBS Sports has Tyson Campbell, the ultra long competitive corner from Georgia. They had them selecting Tyson Campbell there. PFF, right, who's the analytical geniuses there. They have Xavier Collins from Tulsa, the extremely huge linebacker. I think that so I think he's listed at 6'4", but I don't know. Some other ones have him listed at like I don't know. I heard like basketball size, but that's insane at inside linebacker. And of course, Daniel Jeremiah has Mac Jones right there. When you stop, you look at the big picture, Costa. What do you think? I mean, who would you like to see them there at that position, and who could be there? What do you think would benefit the Saints in the long run? Well,
Yeah,
immediate and long run.
Yeah, as I said, this is all about trying to get Jameis Winston to establish himself as a good quarterback in this league. So I'm looking at their receiving core, and you have to include Alvin Kamara in that because he's just so important to the passing game. And I really like what they have in terms of reeling in Jameis Winston's aggressiveness because you've got a terrific check down option in Alvin Kamara. You've got Michael Thomas, who runs a lot of QB friendly slants. But I really think that you still have to utilize the explosiveness of Jameis Winston's arm. So you got to be looking for a wide receiver to pair with Michael Thomas that you can use to stretch the field. And I think there are two names that would make a lot of sense at 28 and that are going to be going in that area. The first one is Rashad Bateman. He might not be the ultimate speedster, but he's got so much size, physicality, and incredible route running. And I'm a big fan of his. And I think that he does have certainly enough speed to threaten downfield and give a really good downfield option to Jameis Winston. And then the other name is Kadarius Toney, the extremely quick, fast, elusive wide receiver from Florida. And he makes magic happen when
I
the
mean,
ball is in his hands.
I
And
mean, you talk
yeah,
about it. Yeah, I mean, he is fast. I mean,
oh
lightning
yeah.
fast.
And I think if you just got to clear up some character concerns and just have faith that you can develop him into maybe more of a complete wide receiver than he is right now. But I think that when you look at Bateman and Toney, those would be two really exciting options that would go a
Oh yeah.
long way towards helping Winston in his development.
Oh yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, because when we look at last year's draft, right? I mean, I believe they brought in Cesar Reese, right? Let me see, and then they actually addressed some other needs also. I believe they brought in Adam Trotman, right? The tight
Yeah,
end,
in the third round from Dayton.
and then they also brought in a linebacker who he was actually highly touted. Let me see if I can square down his name,
Mhm.
Zach Bond.
Oh yeah, I love that pick. I thought it was a really nice value in the third round.
So when you actually look at it, I mean, when you look at the needs right now, linebacker, defensive line, wide receiver, I mean, is there a defensive lineman there that maybe perhaps uh oh look, Ned chimed in. Bateman makes a lot of sense there and a good fit for that team. I think what I was trying to get back to, thank you, Ned, for the comment, was I mean, when you look at last year's what they did last year, I mean, Zach Bond, I know tight end would have been an actual it's a need, right? Because you don't know if they're going to be able to bring back Jerry Cook. I think he's an unrestricted free agent. Maybe he comes back on a friendly deal, but I mean, when you have Adam Trotman, Zach Bond, this adds depth, and they've already have 1 year into the system. So when you look at this, I mean, last year's draft was an actual indication that they were planning a year and ahead, right? A year in advance. And some people will say, well, no, they just missed on those picks. But I like to think, hey, give these players at least 3 years before we can actually judge them. So when you
Hmm.
look at it, I think that Bateman would make an extremely great pick for them, especially
Oh
if they
yeah.
be 28th. I love the way I mean, when I see Bateman, I think the way I feel that when I look at it, I feel like his mindset is that ball is mine. Let me, you know what I mean?
Exactly. That he's got an alpha mentality.
He does have an alpha mentality, and so when you look at it, I mean, overall, do you feel that let's say they get Rashad Bateman, are they going to be disciplined with the rest of the draft? Because obviously, with their salary cap situation, they got to hit home runs in at least three of these picks. Is there any second rounder or third rounder that you think that maybe they should take a flyer on? I mean, this draft class is loaded at linebacker and a defensive tackle. I mean, is there any names out there that we should maybe keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I think that, as you said, it's extremely important given their cap situation to hit on all these picks. And if they
Oh
do
yeah.
opt to go wide receiver early, I think that they should definitely be looking to the defensive line in round two. I think it's likely that they lose Sheldon Rankings in free agency at defensive tackle. And while there's not a lot of round one talent at the position, I do think there are a lot of solid options that they could get at the in the back half of the second round. I think of Jalen Twyman, the defensive tackle from Pittsburgh, and I think he would be a really nice pick at the end of the second round because just the quickness he and hand technique he brings from the interior and is just so important. And in today's NFL, it's crucial to get some of that pressure and pass rush production from the interior because you have all these quarterbacks that are getting really good at if there's pressure from the outside, they'll step up in the pocket, they'll get the ball out quickly, and they'll kill you that way. So you really got to be generating pressure from the inside. And if you have Jalen Twyman there, then that's a great option to do that. He did opt out in 2020, but I think that would be a nice pick and he could be available at their pick in the second round.
Yeah, aside from Darius Stills, Twyman is my second favorite defensive tackle.
Oh,
I
I
think
love Stills too.
me and you're the only ones, right? But yeah, I think Twyman though. I think in 2019 he finished with 10.5 sacks, which is very notable with a defensive tackle. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people are gonna say, they always use that excuse about level of competition. Don't give me that. You know what I mean? Because two offensive guards on you and you're still coming away with that sack, 10.5 sacks. That is some good depth. Let's look at it. Do you think that defensive back? Do you think that defensive back, especially with Jenkins gone, do you think that maybe perhaps they should keep that in the second round and maybe see if maybe Twyman or Stills is there in the third round?
Oh, I think they could definitely do that. I think that at cornerback, one of my favorite targets is Kelvin Joseph. I think that if they were to be able to get him in the second round, that would be a terrific pick because he's stuffed with upside. And so I think their fits their top needs fit this draft pretty well. I think they've got good options at each of these rounds where they can like not go in with a strict strategy of this round we're getting this round we're getting this position, because that's how you miss out on some of the best players. They can really look at everything in a more holistic manner and go, all right, he's the best guy on the board right now, we're going to take him, and then we know there's going to be a good player at this other position later. So yeah, I definitely think they could wait until the third round, even if they were to miss out on Twyman and on Stills, and I'm sure that they could even get one of them in the third round. They could go with another guy like Aleem McNeil from NC State in round
Oh
three, who
yeah.
has got a lot of pass rushing upside as well. So it's a pretty moldable draft in terms of their top needs and what rounds to address them. That they can really focus on who's the best value at each pick.
No, yeah, I think you said it well. But when you stop, you look at it. I think that I mean, when you look at the big picture, I think that Bateman does seem like the most logical pick. I mean, we saw
Yeah.
Michael Thomas. He missed what 9 games last season. So I mean, just not having his presence there, I mean, it allows the defense to kind of tee off and bring 8 men in the box and slow down Alvin Kamara. But then again, Alvin Kamara, who can slow him down with even with 8 men in the box? But going back, I mean, if you look at it, let me ask you this question to end it off. Let's say they hit on three key starters, we're talking about impact
Yeah.
starters that are actually playing. They had a great draft class. They got starters, and let's say Jameis Winston is finally able to catch a groove with a running game, play action. How far do you think that this Saints team can? I mean, give Who Dat Nation some kind of hope, right? Uh, do you think that they can compete for the division if let's just say all the pieces just fall into place?
Well, there is a lot of upside with this team. Let's say they do hit, and they have Michael Thomas and Rashad Bateman on the outside. Maybe they go get one of those explosive slot receivers in the third or fourth round, because there's a ton of them in this draft,
Yeah,
kind of like
sure.
an Elijah Moore or a Dwayne Eskridge or Cade Johnson, one of those guys. And then they've got Alvin Kamara at running back. I don't see how Jameis Winston wouldn't make that step up and be able to be successful. So if they really do draft correctly at the skill positions, that offense can be dangerous. And the defense, there's a lot of key pieces there. I mean, they could be looking at a conference championship run and trying to make it all the way there. I wouldn't. I think that's the ceiling is definitely not any lower on that team if they hit on these draft picks. I agree.
So let me ask you this: if they draft a quarterback,
Who
if they
would they
draft
draft though?
Well, no, I'm just asking if they drafted a quarterback. If they
Yeah.
drafted a quarterback, do you think that that would get into Jameis Winston's psyche?
I think that they've shown with this deal to Jameis Winston that they're giving him his shot, and well, they've already played so many games at quarterback with Taysom Hill and giving him the reps instead of Jameis Winston when Drew Brees went down, that I think that it would be a big mistake to go for a quarterback, given that they're not in range to get one of the top guys.
Well, they were 5-0 with Teddy Bridgewater when Breeze went down, and they're 3-1 when this last year. So
Sure,
when you
I just think Winston is definitely a way more complete quarterback than Taysom Hill.
last question, and that does it for the 2021 outlook, right? The offseason
Mhm.
outlook for the Saints. Because man, we've already seen like what over 100 players agreed to terms and on new deals with new teams almost,
Yeah.
and with their current teams. But last pick. So I mean, last question. So when you look at it, do you think that Sean Payton is the right coach to get Jameis Winston to understand how to harness all his gifts and talents as a quarterback to become the next paid franchise quarterback?
Yes. Yes. I think that Sean Payton is I think he's definitely suited for that. He's really good. I think he's really good at using each player's individual skill set to the team's advantage. I mean, Taysom Hill and Drew Brees cannot be any more different. Yeah, as you said, they managed to go 3-1 with Taysom Hill, who's not even really a complete quarterback. So that just shows what he can get out of each individual player based on their strengths. And I think he's going to be able to use Winston's strengths in a manner that Tampa Bay couldn't, because he'll be able to cut down on some of the mistakes that Jameis made. So I definitely think he's the right man for the job in terms of retooling Winston and making him successful.
It's awesome. So in other words, what you said is they didn't they doing is just retooling. They're not rebuilding, they're retooling. Is that what you're
I
saying?
would say that they just, if they hit on their day one and day two draft picks, they're retooling indeed.
Awesome, man. Hey, Casa, I appreciate you coming on
Of
the
course.
inside the franchise series, and make sure to catch Bull Take Scouting, man. I mean, you can find them on Instagram. Oh man, it's simple and it's straightforward, right to the point. You want to get familiarized with all of these players that are in the actual, in the 2021 draft class. Visit their Instagram page. Go to give them the plugs.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Give them the plugs. Tell them when they can find you on Mondays
Oh
and
yeah.
what and
Yeah,
all
I
of
mean,
them.
we on every Monday night we're live at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on the East West Facebook page, also on our YouTube. Just type in Bull Take Scouting in the search bar, you'll find us. We've also got all of these podcasts available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts at the same name. Look us up on Instagram at that name. It's simple. All the platforms, Bull Take Scouting. You've got all that high quality draft content, scouting reports, podcast episodes, mock drafts, bull takes, everything.
There you go. We appreciate y'all joining us. Stay tuned Thursday. I believe we got the Baltimore Ravens